Welcome to Halftime, a show dedicated to equipping and inspiring people to accomplish what God has prepared them for. I'm Doug Piper, and I'm a Halftime alumni, and these webinars are actually part of my Halftime journey. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Today we have Lloyd Reeb, and Lloyd shares with us each month helpful ideas to aid us with our Halftime journey. Lloyd's a successful real estate developer who made a midlife transition looking for greater meaning, joy, and impact in his second half. For over 20 years, Lloyd has helped leaders make their second half their very best half. He's the founding partner of Halftime Institute, which is a global team that teaches, coaches, and connects successful men and women in their pursuit of significance. And he's taken this message all around the world. Lloyd is also the author of several books, including From Success to Significance, When the Pursuit of Success Just Isn't Enough, and with his wife, Linda, co-wrote Halftime for Couples. Now, if that sounds like where you are, or possibly you have been, and you'd like to work on creating greater meaning, joy, and impact in your life, or maybe you know someone that's even in that season, you can find out more by going to halftime.org. That's halftime.org. And I'll include that information again at the end of our program. Now, today, Lloyd will be chatting on one of what I think is maybe one of our most crucial topics. It's building your next season with surrounding yourself by thriving relationships. So welcome, Lloyd. I'm really looking forward to discussing this topic. And for myself and possibly other type A personalities, frankly, it seems more comfortable to just keep our head down and focus on pursuing the passion we believe God intended for us. However, what might we miss in this next season if we just keep our heads down and not nurture relationships?
Yeah, that's a great question. And thanks for teaming up, Doug, with me to do these together and for your friendship. And as you were just talking about this idea of meaning, joy, and impact, I was just struck again with how much joy this journey has been for me over the last 20 some years. And not that I didn't absolutely love developing real estate, but just, for example, the joy that you and I have had of meeting some really amazing people on our webinars and serving hundreds of people every week and the notes we get back from them. So it's always more fun doing stuff together. But not only that, we need each other, right? I mean, there's things that I simply can't do that you can do. And so in your tribe for the second or half of your life or the next season of your life, you're going to need people around you that bring unique abilities. You're going to need people around you that are part of your tribe that simply encourage you, that hold you accountable. And then there are people around you that you already know and love that you want to prioritize. And then there's a piece of your tribe going forward of relationships that need to stop or end or be demoted in a sense because they're dragging you down or discouraging you. And the topic of your tribe is something that we haven't always included in the Halftime Institute curriculum. So these Coffee with Lloyd times together that Doug and I do are kind of like continuing ed for our Halftime alumni, things that we're learning right now that we think will help you on your journey, help you finish well. And this is one of those topics, isn't it, Doug?
It really is. And I think it's going to be particularly important. As I said, with a type A personality, we tend to be very goal focused, and sometimes those goals don't always include individuals. So I think this will be a lot of fun. But Lloyd, I'd like to just, for those that might not be familiar with this particular interface, it is different than Zoom, which I think is probably a good thing right now. Let me just cover a couple of quick logistical items. We have another live stream scheduled for June 4th at 8 p.m. Eastern with John Suddet on turning pain into purpose. And I'm really looking forward to that. and encourage you to continue our conversation by asking questions. You can click the Ask a Question link and respond to our poll, which is very helpful. We'd love for you to join in the chat and share where you're viewing this from, but don't put questions in the chat screen. We might not catch those in the Q&A. The best place to put those is in the Ask a Question field right down there at the bottom. And in the second half of our program, we will answer those questions. And for those of you joining us on LinkedIn Live, we're glad you're there. We appreciate you being there. And if you want to join in the questions, jump in on the webinar link, which is also there on LinkedIn. And just quickly, if your live stream is not playing correctly, refreshing your browser window corrects most issues. But also, we all know the bandwidth in the internet has been stressed to the max. So there's a gear symbol in the bottom right-hand corner. You can click that and adjust to a lower resolution, and that may give you smoother playback. Everyone that registered will get an email with a link to the recording, Lloyd's resources, and links to the Facebook groups. Now today, here's Lloyd's program, Building Your Next Season Tribe Surrounded by Thriving Relationships.
Well, Doug, we all know the value of our network in the first half of our life. I mean, it became more valuable, didn't it, as we built a network of people that we could call on for expertise, for help, for contacts, for sales, and every part of running our business. Their network was really valuable, and we gave it a lot of intentionality. But when you start into the next season of your life, reinventing yourself, you're largely starting from scratch. And so what we want to do is really come across with a systematic way to jumpstart your tribe for the next season of your life. And we've all heard it said that that the people you surround yourself with and the books you read will shape who you become. And so it is important to think intentionally about who we need around us for this next season. Most often, when we think about our halftime journey, we think about our purpose. What is it I'm going to do next in this next season? And that's natural when you come to an inflection point to answer the question of what's next. But it's equally important to ask a who question alongside of the do question. And there are two different groups of people we're going to talk about today. The people who you love the most and who you want to invest heavily in this next season and build more intimacy with and include them in your exploration now in your halftime journey. And then secondly, those that you will need around you in order to succeed in this journey. Just like I illustrated with you and I, Doug, that it's been said, the African expression that if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go with others or go together. And this is about going far. We want to help you finish well in this next season. So this is the idea of tribe. Those you love the most that you want to include in your journey and those that you will need around you to succeed. So the first piece of our 30 minutes together for Doug and I is why. It's the question, why should you put who first and then the what? Which is the concept for today. And this doesn't mean that you set aside your exploration of what you're going to focus on or what you will do next or what your context should be, but it means that you stop and spend intentional time to distill it down and put it into a plan that's easy, focused, and executable. So first off, here's some of the reasons. There's 4 or 5 of them. The first one is that if your life really isn't just about you, if it's about others, then charity begins at home. So it makes sense that our next season would be focused on your spouse, if you happen to be married, your kids, your siblings, your mom and dad, the people that you love the most, your closest, most intimate friends. So charity begins at home. That's the reason to do who first and then the what. Secondly, anyone living a rich second half of their life, next season of their life, will tell you that relationships and the joy that comes from relationships trump simply more accomplishment. these deeper relationships that we now have the time to nurture and invest in this next season of our lives will bring us more joy than just checking the box. And even if what we're doing is bringing deep compassion to humanity. And then thirdly, sticking with your calling over the long haul is difficult, and you need a tribe around you to finish well. We've studied what does it take to finish well, and one of the key ingredients is to surround yourself with sources of encouragement. And one place for encouragement is your tribe, right? And Doug, you've been experiencing that for the last 3 years or so since you came through Halftime in your own journey. What's that like for you?
Oh, it was essential to. I mean, honestly, it was a little intimidating at first because when we first met together, I was with a half dozen other people that I really didn't know them, where their journey, and now we're all fast friends, and are some of the first people that we call when we have a challenge. And in business, we don't maybe make as many friends at that level of to that same level. So it's an amazing resource that we have, and especially during these COVID times, we've really been getting together a lot.
And it's not just all about, what your calling is, right? I mean, when you had a big win in your family recently, and your daughter got into her first home, and I know that watching, that you were celebrating with those buddies of yours that have become part of your tribe, almost like your personal board of directors. Now, there's another interesting reason why to put the who first and then the what is that for some of you, your purpose is actually going to come out of your tribe. Tomas Brunegard is a CEO from Sweden. He came through Halftime, and I coached him 15 years ago. And I remember asking Tomas, if you had to pick between the perfect organization to live out this calling or spend the next season doing meaningful things with your closest friends, which would you pick? And he instantly said, my friends. He said, I've been a Lone Ranger for a long time. Now I want to do stuff with these 4 or 5 guys that I love the most. And so he wrote that out 9 years ago. Actually, he wrote that into a document that I have in my Tomas Brunegard file. And I talked to him recently, and that's what he's doing. His purpose has come out of the combined interests and talents of his tribe. And they bought a company in Europe that's their platform to serve people, and it's called the Euro Academy. And they're just having a blast doing it together. And then lastly, you actually need your tribe to help you define your journey. This was an interesting discovery for us, Doug, wasn't it? And I want to read a quote from Thomas Merton's really thoughtful book called No Man is an Island. And track with this. It's a little bit complex, but track with this because there's deep wisdom in this. He said, since no man is an island, since we all depend on one another, I cannot work out God's will in my own life unless I also consciously help others work out his will in theirs. His will then is our deeper and fuller integration with other people. And this integration doesn't result in the absorption and disappearance of our own personality, but in its affirmation and its perfection. And so as you help others think through their calling, the big issues of their next season, you gain clarity yourself. This is what Peter Drucker taught Bob when we were first starting the Halftime Institute. He said to Bob, I can tell you why you're not seeing success in your Halftime Institute early work. He said, because, and then this is a quote, smart people need a safe place among peers to think their confusion out loud. And he had learned that the truth about Thomas Merton's deal. Now, Doug, as you and I have worked through this, when you started your journey, you were not clear about what your calling was, right? Like, how do you take an electrical engineer's background, having run a company that did, I don't know how many mergers and acquisitions over time, and then what does it look like? But today, we've discovered it together, didn't we? And I can see things in your life that you can't see, and the same way, the other way, right? So talk about how this has been for you, and maybe even if you've got a picture of your tribe, show us, who these people are that help bring wisdom into your second half.
Yeah, we've been getting together like a lot of people on Zoom, and
That's a motley crew.
We are scattered all over the state of South Carolina, and so during COVID, it's been especially challenging. But I guess we are, like a lot of people during crisis, we're actually drawn together more, and it's been a great resource, not only to help us each kind of move into our second half. We're a sounding board for each other. What do you think of this idea? What do you think of that? Do you know anybody in this area? Just a tremendous resource, but also in life's challenges. One of our members' son went off to college, and he thought, why don't I get our roundtable together and just have each one of them share 60 seconds of advice for someone going off to college. And I thought that was so powerful. I wish, something like that had occurred for my children, and because very inspiring. So yeah, it's just a really strong group that would not have occurred had I not, gone through the program.
So for those of you who've not been part of a halftime journey or process with peers, I am starting several virtual roundtables that you can participate in even now. It's a couple of hours every month over 9 months, and you'll be with 6 or 7 peers online just like this. It's just as intimate as looking each other in the face across the table from each other, if not more intimate. And we've been testing these out, and just click on the note below, contact Lloyd, and I'd be glad to get you into one of those groups. So now Doug and I want to look at a poll, because we always adapt our content to a poll. So this is really interactive, right?
Yeah, it is a very powerful poll. I will go through and read the questions, and we'll kind of look at the results. And it's not too late to put your comment in there, or your vote in there now. And again, we're going to make the rest of the program focused on really the areas that everyone, where it resonates the most. When you think about the tribe around you to make your next season great, which of the following is your biggest challenge? Creating alignment with my spouse and family, finding the right people to work with, finding the right advisors, creating a personal board of directors, or identifying a mentor, even if that's a technical mentor. So Lloyd will look at the poll and see where our numbers are. We are very strongly, it has kind of shifted from where it was this morning, but actually quite a bit from where it was this morning. Identifying a mentor, 45% of our audience sees that as the biggest challenge. Second to that is creating alignment with my spouse and or family, but mentor keeps growing. The right people, right advisors, personal board of directors is all down in 10% or less category. So very strongly spouse, family, and mentor.
Okay, good. So we'll go through each of these, but then we'll put more weight on those ones that are high on the need level. So let me start with the big picture. I encourage you, the things you write down and the things you measure are the things that get your attention and get your time in life. They're the places where you're going to accomplish things. We've all known that in our business, and now we have the opportunity. When we're leading our life as chief life officer, it takes more intentionality to write these things down and be specific about them. So here's my encouragement to you. I have my tribe on this simple little piece of paper. It's one sheet of paper. And this is just a template. There's nothing magical about it, but it forces you to be intentional. And when there's a box on here that you have nobody in it, it's a little bit of a gap analysis. It helps you understand, wow, maybe I should look for someone in that box that could play that role. And so we're going to share this with you at the end of the webinar when we follow up with recording, et cetera, in a day or two. You'll get this template. In the meanwhile, just assume that you have that you're able to structure this a little bit more. I want you to think of two categories. Actually three, but the two primary ones. One is, who are the already existing relationships that you're going to prioritize? And, the easiest way is every single one of those people happens to have a name. And if you're going to focus on loving a few people extravagantly, it seems strange, but there's power in writing their names down. And, this was 2009. I have this little piece of paper I've carried with me in my leather fold here. And I just wrote this little list here in April of 2009. These are the 10 people that I was going to love extravagantly. Actually, April of 2008. And then I wrote down what they care the most about. And then I wrote down what I was going to do to try to be a help to them. That was a first step in building this inner world tribe. And you think, really, it was just 2008 that you got that sort of focused and intentional? Gosh, I wish I had done that years ago. I can't tell you how much that has transformed every single one of those relationships. And now I've added a son-in-law and a daughter-in-law to that list. I have added 2 grandchildren to that list, right, Doug? And that takes up a chunk of your calendar. So really, who are those relationships? Write them down. And then who are the most intimate friends that you want? And then let's talk about the mentor and personal board, because these are your inner world. There's real value in having an older, wiser person looking over your life. It's different than a personal board. A personal board of directors, and Doug and I have done a webinar on that topic, which we'll add in the link and we send you the follow-up. But a personal board are peers that are around you bringing perspective, and they're not so much accountability, although there's a little bit of accountability, but they're about wisdom for the future and perspective. But a mentor can see around corners because they've been there before you. They raise things that aren't even necessarily on your mind. The way to do it, in my view, is to first think about the areas where you need to grow in your life. Ask yourself, who do I want to be in 10 years? Who do I want to be like in 10 years? And then make a list. I made a list of 13, 14 people after Bob Buford passed away, and then whittle it down to 2 or 3 people, and then talked about that with my personal board and with my family. And that's just a process of thinking about who could bring the wisdom into your life. Now, Doug, a mentor is not necessarily a life mentor, right? It could be something specific, like in your area. You've had at least one mentor. Talk a bit about that over the last year or two.
Yeah, it's it's been good. I would almost consider right now my roundtable to be sort of, as a group, a mentorship of some sort, certainly not an individual. So what I've been more challenged with is the technical side of things, to do all these things with the live stream events. It's as a lot of people have learned as they've tried to do more from home now that we're here at COVID. There's a fair amount of work in lighting and mics and cameras and the technology, and I'm continuing to learn more. And without a lot of technical mentors, I couldn't have got us to this point in the time frame that I have. So it was nice to hear that there can be different types of mentors, I guess, at different times in your life.
Yeah, I remember I had a business mentor when my partner and I started in our retirement housing business. He was a French-Canadian guy that owned 26 or 27 retirement homes, and I would just walk through the halls with him of his facilities and learn how he created the culture that was so successful. And I knew how to design great buildings with my partner and get them built and filled up, but I didn't know anything really about creating this culture. And so there it was a simple model where I knew there was a gap in my wisdom. I was looking for someone who was 10 or 15 years ahead of me that was world class at something, and then just a simple ask. There's nothing like the power of saying, would you help me? And when I look back on the impact Bob Buford had in my life over 22 years of mentoring, it was priceless. It was multiples of what I learned at McGill University. So that's the first group. The second group is those relationships that need to come to a necessary ending. This is what Peter Drucker called planned abandonment. And Henry Cloud has written a book called Planned Abandonment, or called Necessary Endings, rather. And you want to ask yourself, are there relationships in my life that are distracting me, dragging me down, discouraging me, using up a disproportionate amount of emotional energy that I need to do something different with? Then the third category is those people that you need around you to live out your mission, your calling. It's hard to know who you need around you if you don't know your calling, if you don't know your mission statement. So the first thing is get clear on your calling and your mission statement. But once, assuming that you have clarity, then you want to ask yourself, who are the people that I need to work with? Like my assistant, Priscilla, my colleague that does everything with me in terms of planning and organizing life. And she and I just bring so much to this together, but we couldn't do it without each other. And David Wong in Hong Kong we're partners. We talk every month. They're going through some significant disruption in Hong Kong right at this moment. We're in this together, and we're helping a tribe of halftime men and women in Hong Kong adapt to the challenges they face. And then secondly, advisors. You need some expert advisors. In my case, a financial advisor, Hunter Pugh with Ron Blue and Company, an estate attorney that has the same values I do and that is nearby, so that if something happens to me, Linda can meet with them. A pastor, my lead pastor at our church, is a big part of my journey. Maybe a marriage and family therapist. It's a strength, not a weakness, to have a therapist on speed dial. And then industry experts, leaders, thought leaders, influencers. And I have a whole list of those. It's the biggest group in my list, in my map, my tribe map, is this category of experts. For example, Tom McGee is a part of the halftime team. He is world-class at adult learning techniques. Everything that Doug and I are doing is built around how adults learn. It's interactive because that's part of how adults learn. Tom McGee is part of our team, and he is a world-class expert at that after a long career in that kind of collaborative, action-based learning at Ernst & Young and other places. Gary Verink is part of my tribe, who's a halftime alumni that was the COO for International Justice Mission. So when I need expertise around human trafficking, because I'm helping someone through halftime that wants to serve in human trafficking, I go to Gary Verink. So I have built out intentionally a tribe of experts in every single area that I need over time. And then I invest some time in those. I try to really serve them. And in exchange, they serve the people that we're trying to help. And then the people that you serve. This is the other important area of your tribe. There's a long tail, as you know, to the relationships that I have with the people that we serve. And so a part of my week, every week, goes to just checking back in with people, or people come back to me in a crisis, and I have to be able to allocate time to that. I have to leave enough time on my calendar to be able to love and serve that part of the tribe, the people that I serve. And they're going to be people you're serving that need to have some kind of long-term relationship with you, and they're part of your tribe. You need to continue to serve them. What I'm doing today, what Doug and I are doing today, is part of serving our tribe, right, Doug? So let's wrap up with these ideas. Here are 5 things that I think are important if I were starting all over again to build a tribe for the next season. The first would be to write their names down. And this template that we're going to send you is a great way to start, but just start with a piece of paper. Who are the people that you love the most, that you want to nurture a relationship with even deeper? And who are the people you need around you who would you think would make a great mentor? Write the names down. Secondly, put those people on your calendar. Nothing will happen if they don't show up in your life. So put them on your calendar. I'm investing in the 10 boys of the people I love the most. And so I have a standing appointment on my calendar every month for 90 minutes. And it just says, reach out to your friends' 10 boys. And so it has all their names and their contact info. And so it's so easy for me to say, hey, Stevie, how's it going? Or just quickly go down. I don't get them every time, and I don't always send them something that's just perfect, but it's made a huge difference over the last 5 years. And then work at understanding them. For each of those 10 boys and for the people on my personal board of directors, I'm working at understanding them. What are their strengths? What are their interests? What's their love language? What's their biggest fear? I have a list here for our family that I made. Again, it's just written. Every person in my immediate family, and then what's their single biggest opportunity? What's their biggest risk? And what am I going to do to try to help them in 2020? And then the fourth thing is offer them help. I remember being on calls with Bob Buford, and he ended almost every call by saying, what is the most meaningful thing I could do to be useful to you? And I thought, wow, imagine going through life if every conversation you ended with, what is the most meaningful thing I could do to be useful to you? How joyful your life would be and how much opportunity you would have. And then the fifth thing is share your dreams and plans with your tribe so that they can be part of it, so they can understand more intimately where you're going. And it helps build the glue, the connection. So 5 steps: write their names down, put them on your calendar, focus on really understanding their needs, their dreams, their personalities, etc. Offer to help them, and then share your journey with them. So Doug, we should stop there since we're right at the top of the hour, and that's our commitment to people, right?
It is, and we are right on schedule, and I appreciate that so much, and I appreciate everybody joining us. Now, the second half of our program is your questions, and so we will transition to those. We'll take the first question. There's still time for you to enter in some more questions if you would like, and if you see a question there you want to vote up, you can do that. So again, for those that need to leave, we understand that. The rest is recorded. And actually, if you need to submit a question and leave, you'll still get it answered and get a unique email with a link to exactly where your question was answered in the video. So don't hesitate to do that too. So Lloyd, we'll transition to the first question. Lloyd, this first one is, mentors are challenging. Can you have more than one? For example, a technical mentor, or do they have to be chairman of the United Nations, former chairmen of the United Nations?
Yeah, and so we touched on that, I think, a bit before, just serendipitously, but obviously there's value to getting somebody who's been the chairman of the United Nations, right, Doug? Because they would have so much global exposure if that was useful to you. But, Linda runs something called momsmentoring.com, my wife, Linda, and that's her passion. And she picks moms who have been fully engaged in building strong families and healthy marriages in their own life, and that have an interest to be involved in the lives of other younger moms that have preschool kids. But they don't have to all be the same. And there are many great ways to have a family, many ways to have a great family. There's probably a handful of ways to ruin your family. So a mentor, it doesn't have to be someone who's a rock star in an area, but someone who's been there before, is good at listening, and is interested. So I think, just like we said earlier, if we start by making a list of people that are similar to what we'd like to be 10 or 15 years from now. And, you don't have to formalize mentorship. You can start by saying, do you have time for coffee? As simple as that. And ask them some questions. And a mentor can have an influence in an early part of your journey, and it can taper off over time. One of the mentors in my life is Bill Wellens, who was a founding pastor at Fellowship Bible Church in Little Rock. And he and Robert Lewis created things like Men's Fraternity and Raising a Modern Day Knight and things like that together. And he and I wrote a book together called Unlimited Partnership, about how pastors and businessmen and women can partner together. Well, he has 9 grandkids, and he's one of the best grandpas I know. And so when our daughter-in-law got pregnant, I could see that I was going to be a grandpa before long. I went to Little Rock and spent some time with Bill and sat at dinner, and I wrote, sort of under the table, I was taking notes, and I wrote down 6 things that I learned from him and then distilled them down into a single sheet of paper that I sent to him. But the biggest thing Bill taught me, it's not rocket science, but it was from experience. He said to me, when you show up, your adult kids already know what you think. You've written about it. They've heard you at your halftime talks, unfortunately, all over the world. They've gone with you to places. And he said, but you need to give them freedom to be themselves. And he said, so here's my sort of watchword for you. Make up your mind you're going to join their journey, not judge their journey. So I wrote it down, and I came home and I talked to every one of our kids. I said, I'm committed to joining your journey going forward, not judging your journey. So I want you to help me understand, what does that look like? How can I be actively involved in bringing my best to you? In other words, joining your journey, but not sitting over here with my arms folded saying, well, why'd you do that? Or I would have done this, or whatever the case might be. There's the power of a mentor. Now, that was one dinner, and yet his impact in my life continues to this day. And that was two and a half years ago.
And I think that is such a powerful statement. You had mentioned it earlier, and I had written it down, and we think about it regularly as we approach our adult children when we want to help them. It adds valuable perspective. Well, thank you, Lord.
Doug, one little thing on that.
Yeah.
I noticed that Bill Wellens' name is in my tribe map right here. Isn't that interesting? I'd forgotten about that, but that's the power of having it written down. Because now we have our second granddaughter that was born 4 weeks ago. And I still need wisdom. So I'm probably going to go back to him and say, okay, here's what's worked so far. What do I need to know next? Right.
If you can get some more pearls for that, that's exactly. A great time well spent. All right, we will move on to our next question. Dale has our next question. In addition to Bob Buford, which mentor has influenced your approach to your vocation?
Well, one person that I have had the privilege of being a part of his journey when he was in halftime was Senator Dan Coates, who then went back. He had been ambassador to Germany after a long career in the Senate, chose to go back into the Senate and became the director of national intelligence and retired from that in August. And I had a conversation with him recently, and I asked him, at this season of my life, I'm in an inflection point of I've done this for 22 or 3 years. Now it's my opportunity to invest in others who can do this way and do it better and with different talents and different platforms. So a couple of things happened when I picked up the phone to call Dan Coates. It's a little bit embarrassing, but the first thought went through my mind is, do I really want to make this call? And that was rooted in laziness, because I knew that if I reached out to him and sent him my roadmap, and if we started in a conversation about where to from here, that I wouldn't really be able to just drift. I would have in my mind that next time I talk to him, I got to show up with something. I have to have done something with what he taught me. And so that was the first thought. And I thought, wow, I have benefited from a mentor since I was 12 when I was a gymnast, and I had a mentor all the way through my gymnastics career, and then a business mentor. And I still am afraid of a mentor. I'm still afraid of the accountability and the push and the butt kicking that's going to come with having a wiser, older person look into your life and give you the honest truth. So I just know that that's probably something true that of all of us, is that you pick up the phone to make a call like that, there's a piece of you that maybe wants to be a little bit lazy and just have the freedom to just drift. But I asked,
well, like your coach, he was probably going to raise the bar.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is what Dan Coates did for me in our call 2 weeks ago. I asked Senator Coates, what do you know at 77 that you wish you knew at 58? What do you know for sure at 77 that you wish you knew at 58? And he said to me, teach yourself to number your days so that you apply your life and heart to wisdom. And he said, now that's right out of the Bible, but this is the distillation of what he's learned in his 70s. He said, focus on a few things you can do really well and add tremendous value, but don't kick the can down the road. Don't push things off that you hope you'll do in your 60s or 70s. He said so many of his friend group in his 70s had things they really wanted to focus on and accomplish, and then just dribbed and drabbed through a life of comfort and leisure without the discipline of focusing on them. And then things come up like health issues or other challenges that he said, you can't imagine how many of them never got to those big things they wanted to do. Now, that's priceless. I mean, that was one phone call. I got two big things out of it. Number one, I'm still tempted to drift, even after all these years of learning the value of being accountable. And secondly, just perspective. I tell you, I did not think about that from the vantage point of what he brought to me just a few weeks ago.
You knew it, but he underscored it.
Yeah. So that is that's exactly right. He made it come alive. Right.
Yep. Yeah. There's a difference between knowing something and then really feeling it. And he brought it home. Well, that was a great question, Dale. Tom has our next question. Lloyd, would you talk about the makeup of your own personal board? I'm interested in your thought process as you put the board together, the diversity of the group, what each person brought to you, etc.
Yeah. So first of all, history has shown that some of the best, history makers have had a personal board. C.S. Lewis, William Wilberforce, etc. They called them different things. That's just nomenclature. But they were intimate relationships where people were intentionally looking into and speaking into their lives, and where they were committed to acting on what they learned. We've done a lot of work around making this easy. I've participated in 4 or 5 personal boards of the people I've coached over the years, and I'm in 2 of them right now. I do it really well. I love these people, obviously, but I do it to learn, and everyone is different. So I think that should be comforting. There are some common things that work, and there are a few things that make a board not work. So here are some of the common things about building a personal board. They should be people who know and love you. They should be people that you consider to be wise, and they should bring different perspectives, and they should have the time and the inclination to speak the truth into your life. If they don't have time, I remember being on a board with somebody that he was always in an airport. One of the participants on the board was always in an airport with noise in the background, or in a convertible car with wind blowing through his microphone. And I just thought, gosh, he's just kind of doing this, whatever, but that's a distraction. That's not going to help you. You're likely to get bad advice. My personal board is just 3 people. We don't really meet together, all of us together, although they do come over for dinner and we hang out sometimes that way. They all live nearby. I find that helpful, but that's not essential. The other boards that I'm on of people, they have, one has 3 people that are local in his own neighborhood that he really, really is close to. His pastor from previous city that they lived in, and a close family friend from back in New York, where their family originally came from. So those are the characteristics of it. Mine are Randy, James, and Lori. Randy's an anesthesiologist. Now, anesthesiologists don't just give you a little bit of this injection and a little bit of that injection. They're precise, right? They're data driven. And so Randy wants to know the facts. And so he needs to know exactly what am I doing with my time and energy and money, et cetera. Lori is a talented banker from Bank of America and very deep faith. She's a prayer warrior, you'd call her. She prays a lot. She prays for each and every event that I do here and around the world. And she brings deep spiritual wisdom, but she's more of an operator. She had a big team at Bank of America, and she's very effective at it. And then James ran a national sales team for a pharmaceutical company, and he is emotional. He wants to talk things through. And he finds it frustrating if I show up at lunch with a mental agenda of what we're going to talk through, because he wants to feel his way through the conversation. Now, I keep track of the feedback they give me. I share it with each other. And if you looked at my file of wisdom I've learned from them, it's unbelievable. And it has kept me from many a pitfall. Probably the best thing I did was when I asked them to send an email to Bob Buford, just describing my life. I asked them to send a long rambling email to him and not send it to me, describing their observation of my life, what my biggest risks were, and what my opportunities were that I'm unaware of. And I'll tell you, that combination of a personal board and a mentor, if you can get them to go back and forth a little bit, it's so powerful. The things he saw through the lens of these 3 people that are on my personal board was vital to him being able to give me real practical wisdom.
So that mentor needs to be somebody that'll tell you that last 10% and you'll believe it and do something about it.
Yeah. If these people in your life don't have credibility with you, you're probably not going to take their advice seriously, right? And one of the things Bob taught me about being mentored is it's your responsibility to set up the time with your mentor. You need to tell them what's up in your life, unfiltered. You need to tell them what you learned, and then you need to tell them what the results were, what you did with what you learned from them. So I always use those simple steps that he taught me.
Well, Tom, what a powerful question and a great way to wrap up a very inspiring event today, Lloyd. I appreciate it so much. Our discussion is always so meaningful. Always leave refreshed, and especially during these quarantine times, it's especially nice to get the opportunity to do this. Thank goodness for this technology.
Absolutely.
Well, as we wrap up, Lloyd, is there any closing thought that you'd like to just add? And I would just touch on, do we need to touch on a little bit on alignment with wives and family? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, great point. I think you're right. That's, if you happen to be married, that's your most important tribe member, right? And I think the mental posture that you and I want to cultivate is to decide to put their calling and their interests ahead of our own in the next season. If you're like me, you look back over the first part of your life and your career, it seems like Linda was always putting my interests and my business ahead of her own and serving. And it seemed to me in halftime that this was my opportunity to turn the tables. And so putting mom's mentoring at the top of my list of things to focus on and help her with, using my strengths without taking over her dream, that's important. What is your spouse's dream? It should be on your roadmap. If you don't know what your spouse's dream is, it's hard to get behind it. Now, he or she may not be able to articulate it right off the bat, and you certainly don't want to push them into feeling like now they need to tackle world poverty after, whatever they've been doing for the first season of life. But knowing their dreams, knowing what they would like if their life turned out perfectly, and then prioritizing that. And so that means putting them on the calendar. So for me, the way I prioritize Linda on my tribe is that I take a day a week that's a Linda day. And so it's marked off in perpetuity for the rest of if you look at my calendar for 2021, every Friday is already blocked off for a Linda day. That doesn't mean it won't be moved. And it might move to a Monday or a Tuesday or whatever, but it's not going to get deleted. And it's just a way of prioritizing Linda. And it's a day that we do stuff she loves. And sometimes it's buy the next, annual flowers and put them in all her pots around our property. And other times it's play tennis and go for a bike ride or go out on the boat. Sometimes if it's just raining, we'll go shopping, for goodness sakes. These are things I might not do. That's something I might not do on my own, but it's something that she might enjoy, although she's not a big shopper. But sometimes so you may want to ask yourself, where does my spouse go on my calendar consistently? Where my phone's turned off, they've got my full undivided attention, and it's focused on things they love. I know Linda loves adventure. And so every Linda day, I try to bake some kind of adventure into the day. And sometimes I'm successful. You and I've talked about this, Doug, but not every Linda day is a golden day. And you might say, well, that's bad. And yeah, I used to feel like if a day that was a Linda day wasn't a golden day, that I had failed at it. But what I've learned is that if I have 52 Linda days a year, and if 35 of those are golden days, it might be that the other 15 or however many were the days that were essential, where we had deep, maybe difficult conversations. Mm-hmm. It made the 35 golden days possible. But to have 35 golden days with your soulmate or your spouse every year for the rest of your life, that's a great second half. And I believe it's about intentionality. And not every spouse is going to want to spend a day doing something with us, right? Yours looks different than mine, doesn't it, Doug?
It does. but it still goes back to, I think, what Senator Coates told you, and that is measuring your days. So you've measured out those 52 days, and it sounds like that's an essential part of the alignment in our second half.
Yeah, we've been doing that for 10 and a half years now. And when we came up on the 10-year mark, I did a book. Every Linda day, I take a picture of Linda. And I don't know that she knew that. So I did one of those books that you get printed with a hardback thing. And it was 10 years of Linda days. And I gave it to her. And as I was preparing that, I realized this is the single best thing I've done in the last 10 years. This is truly priceless. And I'm just so thankful I did it. So to me, that's irrefutable evidence that prioritizing your spouse and your kids. I have a standing date with our daughter, Carolyn, who lives in France. Every month, she goes to her favorite restaurant at dinner, and I go to mine at lunch because they're 6 hours ahead of us. And we have a date on FaceTime. And we talk about life just like we had dates all her growing up years. Every month we had a date. So I can't, the surprising thing for me, Doug, is I go to my favorite restaurant in Davidson, North Carolina, and the waitresses almost always say to me after I get off my FaceTime call with Carrie, they almost always say to me, she is so lucky. And I thought, wow, that's one lady telling me from her perspective that to have your dad prioritize you every month for an hour-long date face-to-face in your favorite restaurant is a thing, right? It's a big thing. And that vantage point, I never expected to have them say that to me.
Right.
But to me, that's part of building your tribe, as important or more important than us as a team that are serving halftimers.
Wow. Well, this was fantastic, Lloyd, and I appreciate everybody that's there with us today. We appreciate you being here with us and joining us for today's program, and we'll do more of these in the coming months. Our next one, though, is actually June 4th. It will be at 8 p.m. Eastern with John Sundit, and it'll be Turning Pain into Purpose. The webinar is recorded, and the link will be sent to everyone that has registered. Feel free to share that out. We will also be posting it shortly on YouTube and in other locations. So we appreciate you joining us today. Everyone have a fantastic rest of the week and weekend, and we look forward to catching you again sometime. Bye-bye.